Omanut, it's your Mogala Omanut Eva, and happy Hanukkah! We're here! The Hanukkah story is a story about resilience, about resistance, about fighting for justice. After not being allowed to practice Judaism under the rule of their Greek-Syrian oppressors, the Maccabees lead a revolt and win, which is a miracle because they're outnumbered. And they're able to rededicate the Second Temple. This is a really big deal for Jewish people. They lit the menorah in the temple to rededicate it. There was only a little bit of oil, and miraculously it lasted 8 whole nights. So that's why we celebrate Hanukkah for 8 nights. This is an especially important holiday, I think, for us this year. Our ancestors rose up against all odds and come together and fight for what they believed in. There is also a long tradition in art of people standing up for what they believe for and speaking out. And one of these examples is painted story quilts. Faith Ringgold is famous for making painted story quilts. Quilt making spans multiple centuries and so many different cultures. It uses scrap fabric and puts them to use, recycles them. Some quilts have even been used for fundraising to support homeless or domestic violence shelters, for example. Quilters also put their art to use to raise awareness about cancer and other diseases, military veterans, or to commemorate historical events and traditions. Quilters often memorialize loss. Consider the many AIDS quilts featuring individual faces that traveled around the United States in the 1990s, Holocaust memorial quilts, Similarly, artists in Chile demonstrated dictatorship and their resistance to that dictatorship through brightly colored patchwork images known as arpilleras, which memorialized los desaparecidos, the disappeared people. Artist and author Faith Ringgold is renowned for her painted story quilts. She surrounds her narrative paintings with a quilted fabric border, which creates visual art that tells a story in color, texture, and pattern. I invite you to make a painted story quilt which maybe illustrates a loss that you've felt this year, or a vision of the future, a brighter future. So the first thing we're going to do is sketch our story or our design onto the paper. Questions you might respond to in your painted story quilt are: how do you let the light in through the cracks? What have you lost? What are you rededicating? What does resilience mean to you? How do you create light in the world? What small miracles have you experienced? Who or what are you lighting a candle for this Hanukkah? You can also add text. You'll want to trace over in black marker or pen so that you can see the design through the fabric. We're going to place the 8x10 fabric over the sketch and trace the design. You can tape it down to keep it flat and in place if you want while you're tracing. And then remove the sketch from underneath, and now we're going to color in our story. I'm using watercolor pencils, which you can dip straight into the water. You can also brush water onto the fabric and then color with the pencils. There are a few different ways to do it that create slightly different effects, so you can play around with those. And then I also am using watercolor paints just to fill in the bigger areas, like the sky. So the fabric's gonna curl a little bit because it's getting wet. Don't worry about that. It'll flatten out later. As the painted story is drying, you can cut little pieces of scrap fabric. If they're already patterned, you'll just cut them up. If you're using some leftover muslin or plain fabric, you can decorate them with different patterns and colors. Maybe that will help tell your story. And after the fabric has dried, you'll glue the large piece in the center of the felt. And then with the smaller pieces that you've cut, you can arrange them around it as a border and glue those pieces into place. And then if you want to add beads, ribbon, lace, buttons, or anything else to your design with glue or stitching, you can do that too. You can also make faux stitches by just using a fine tip marker or pen to make stitch marks on your design. Thanks for joining me today, Omanut. I hope you have a wonderful Hanukkah, and take care.
The children sing, the children dream, and their tears may fall, but we'll hear them call, and another song will